Hello friends, welcome back to a new video. We're filming a Q&A today because we hit a big milestone and I reached 5,000 subscribers a couple weeks ago or a month ago. I forget the exact date. And that day when I actually saw like that it hit 5K, I was celebrating like internally with my my friends and George and all of that. So big win there. I also will say that it's my like 4-year YouTube anniversary. 4 years ago on November 2nd, 2020, I uploaded my first video, which was like a work from home vlog back when those were all the rage during COVID. I can't believe it's been 4 years and I'm really grateful that I've reached 5K and that you guys are here. I will say, not to take a grim turn, but it's very hard for me to celebrate my accomplishments, especially if it's slow growth accomplishment. For me, it's been hard to grow slowly on YouTube, although I am all for slow growth and feel like it is most aligned with me, but it's been hard to celebrate the milestones. I feel like hitting 1K was a huge milestone, and then after that, it's kind of just like, okay, like when's the next big milestone? And in my head, my perfectionist all or nothing brain has a hard time like celebrating myself and celebrating the little progress I've made, because I've made slow progress each month. Like each month I've gained at least 100 subscribers on average, which is amazing. But for me, it's hard to be like, that's amazing, because it's not like huge immediate growth. And that's been a journey that I've been on these past 4 years. So hitting 5,000 subscribers is something that I'm trying to be excited about and honoring my own internal dialogue at the same time. Okay, George just like came in and derailed my whole thinking process. So we're getting back into this video. What are we doing? We're doing a Q&A, friends, and I listed questions, or I put on my community tab and also on Instagram, I asked you guys to leave me some questions. You guys delivered, and I'm very excited to answer these. So I've put these into categories as one does, and we're gonna start with Archivist Career, YouTube, personal questions, which is just a slew of random questions, neurodiversity, and books, movies, music category. I figured we'd end it on a lighthearted note with that category. And will this be an hour long? It might be, because I am rambling, but that's okay because we are celebrating that I've reached 5K and answering questions along the way. So let's hop to it. All right, so now we've entered the archives category. First question, and I will like put screenshots of who asked the questions down below, but I have them all in my, you guys can't see this, I have them all in my notes app, so it's just easier for me to read them, but I want to at least acknowledge everybody in asking a question. So thank you in advance to everybody that left me a question and is oh so curious to hear from me. I appreciate you oh so much. Okay, first question. Any tips on finding a full-time job as an archivist? What, in your perspective, are the benefits and drawbacks of having multiple jobs to achieve a full-time status? Great question. So if you guys don't know, I work 2 different archives jobs. I have a Monday to Thursday, what I call my main archives gig, and that is about 30 hours a week. And I also picked up a part-time job that I work on Fridays at a historical society, and that I work from a range of like 4 to like 7.5 hours. So between the two, I work between like 30 and 40 hours, but I don't work 40 hours anymore. I used to, and I will explain as we get into other questions to give you guys context. So my first tip for actually just finding full-time job as an archivist, there's a lot that goes in to the job hunting process. I feel like I could make a whole video, I guess, on that. So I'll try and keep it abridged as best as I can. And I do have other Q&A videos and archivist video vlogs that I will link below where I talk about these in more depth in case I miss something. But yeah, I have a few places that I recommend you look, like websites in terms of like where to actually find jobs, and I will list them down below. I also have a PowerPoint presentation that I will also link that I created for a talk that I did a couple weeks ago, a month ago, and also did a vlog on that where I shared my career as an archivist and I guess how I became an archivist. So there's more in-depth information for that. But if you have your credentials or whatever and you're just trying to find job listings, my tip are to check out archivesgig.org. I think it's .org, which is basically just a blog where whoever owns it lists different archivist positions all across the US, and I think there are international positions as well. That's the main place that I look at, and I always am perusing that website to just see what's out there, keep my brain fresh in terms of like what employers are looking for, and also just helping out people I know and staff that I am responsible for to help them find other gigs or part-time jobs as well. So you'll find full-time positions on there, part-time positions, internships, externships. A lot of positions are geared towards new professionals, which are like people who've graduated within the last 2 to 3 years. And the hiring is geared towards early archivist professionals. That's one place I recommend. There's also another website, I can't think of the acronym right now, but it's more on the info science, library science end of things, and that also just lists by state and internationally jobs in that area. The one approach is looking at forums or websites where there are listings available. That's kind of the main way you would think to look for a job. Indeed is also another place to find jobs, and LinkedIn. Now I have a job hunting hack that may or may not work depending on where you're at and what you're looking for. So somebody that we hired at where I work, they reached out to us by email. It was essentially a cold email because they were moving to the area and saw that we were, you know, an archives, and they just emailed us out of the blue and asked us if we had any openings or internships or volunteer positions, just kind of opening that door if we had anything available. And we don't list our job postings ever because we are a small archives, and basically I am the HR department. I do a lot of things in my position. If we can just hire somebody through word of mouth, or somebody, you know, is referred to us, that's the easiest way for us to hire somebody versus putting up an application and going through this long hiring process. And that's just because we are small archives with not a lot of resources. So I say this because a hack is that you could look in your area or in another kind of city or state or area that you're open to moving to, seeing what archives or museums or libraries or historical societies or historic sites are in existence in those areas, and then just reach out to them. Just send them an email and ask if they have any positions or upcoming positions, because a lot of these smaller places are similar to us and we're not actively putting positions out there, but we might have funding or can find funding to hire somebody. I should also say that we are a nonprofit, and a lot of historical societies and museums and archives are nonprofits, so we rely on a lot of grant funding and donations and gifts and an endowment to like function. So for us, my boss, my executive director, is always looking for grants to get money. Money for processing, money for hiring, money for supplies. Just, it's a 24/7 game of trying to make sure that we can, you know, have funds to hire more people. Now we do have an endowment, and that is how I am like, that's how my salary is getting funded, and we do have a growing small staff, partly because of this endowment and also because of grants that we've been awarded. So shout out to my boss for making sure that we're always having money. So that was a long-winded answer to that question. What is your perspective on the benefits and drawbacks of having, my perspective on having a full-time job versus multiple part-time jobs? So when I graduated, I, out of the gate, had a part-time archives job. I had not graduated from my grad program yet. I was about to, and I just got a part-time archives job that I was super excited about. But it was only, I think, 20 some hours a week. It was like 3 days for like, I think it was like 21 hours a week or something. So very much part-time with no benefits and all of that. So I had to have another part-time job to pay my bills. So at that point I was still serving and working at a restaurant. So for a good little while, maybe like a year, yeah, like about a year, I was doing that, working part-time at the archives and then working as a server. And then after that year, I was actually promoted and offered to work full-time because one of our staff members was leaving. She was retiring. So essentially I would take on her duties with a full-time position. So I was so excited. I said yes, and I was in that position for about 4 years until I resigned and came to my current job, where I've now been at since 2020, so over 4.5 years. When this position was offered to me, it was a full-time position, but the salary was much lower than I wanted at the time. I also had a business and trying to do things on the side with like a online business where I was coaching, doing photography. I've done a slew of things over the years, and if you've been following me from those days, you know I pivot a lot and have a lot of change in how I've made money on the side, and now I just do YouTube. But at that point, I really wanted to quit my full-time job, and I wanted to be a full-time entrepreneur, which is just so funny to say now because I don't want that anymore. So I negotiated my salary and my position and said, okay, this is the salary I want, and I'll only work 4 days a week. And we back and forth, my boss and I, and it was approved. So I felt that was like a good deal on my end, because I would have 4 days working at the archives, and then Fridays would be my free day, my flex day, to work on my business and whatever side things that I was finding myself doing. At that time, I was doing photography, like brand and portrait photography. So I was like, okay, cool, I can keep up having clients and maintaining that side of things like on Fridays and the weekend, and then I would work at my normal job Monday through Thursday. With the pandemic, I had a change of heart of what I wanted to do, and I was very burned out with my side business and kind of slowly, gradually stopped having clients and stopped kind of promoting it. Fridays turned into my free days, where at that point, I had started YouTube, so I was able to focus on creating YouTube content. Fast forward maybe a year and a half, my boss asked me if I wanted to work or pick up some hours at another historical society. So my boss runs 2 archive museums. She asked if I wanted to work part-time at the other job, and I said, sure. I've been doing that for probably like 2 years now. I don't know, time blindness. And that's also flexible as well, because I can choose to work when I want to work, and if I want to take a day off, I can just not come to work. It's very much, I come to work, I log my hours, I submit my hours, and as long as I'm in communication with my boss about my schedule, it's been working out fine. So there are times where I'll work completely every Friday. I'll work at my historical society job, and then there are other times when I have more busy seasons, like in the fall time, where I'll take more time off to spend on YouTube and rest as well, and that's been working out for me. And I think this is a non-traditional approach to working in the field, although it's not actually, because unfortunately our field, the archives museum field, is very competitive. There are not a lot of jobs out there, and they're not well paid either. So unfortunately, we were doing this because we want to do this, because we're passionate about this, not because we're making money from it. So, I mean, in college, I wanted to be a full-time, like I wanted a full-time job. I wanted the benefits. I wanted, you know, that 9-to-5 life, because that's what we were told growing up is like what you're meant to go after and meant to achieve. And I've just kind of deconstructed that for myself. And I think also seeing examples of other people, mainly my boss, kind of being in this dynamic role with her career was really inspiring, and just showed me that I don't have to do this traditional like full-time 9-to-5 job. Now, the drawbacks would definitely be like I have to show up to 2 different places. Having a full-time job is much more simple because your brain and your time is just focused on going to one place. Yes, that's definitely a drawback for me that I struggle with sometimes, but it's also exciting for me because I like having 2 different jobs that I can go to. I always say Fridays are like my treat days. I get to go work at the Historical Society, and I don't have to deal with my like main job where I have to do a lot of admin work, and there's just a lot more responsibilities I have there. So on Fridays, I can really focus on processing work and just like head down, headphones in, you know, doing my own thing. And I still do have to manage interns and volunteers, and you know, it's not completely like a solo like environment all the time, but there are times when there are slower periods and I can just focus on what I want to do. That was 15, that was really long. I'm gonna have to cut this down. So I hope I answered that question. Okay, advice for getting into archive jobs with no experience or archives degree. So if you're somebody that's like making a career change, you're in school right now, you're trying to figure out what you want to do as a career, this question is mainly for you. This person is asking what to do if you have no experience and no archives degree. So again, this field is competitive and there's not a lot of jobs out there. So it is good to have a degree of some field related to history. So bachelor's degree in history or art history, and then a lot of positions want you to have an advanced degree, like a master's degree in library science or some other relevant field. So I have a master's degree in applied history, which is just another word for public history, which is just another way to say I'm working at a job that involves history. That is not teaching, because I never wanted to be a teacher. It's just not my lane. I don't want to deal with students, and being an introvert, I just knew I would burn myself out in that kind of atmosphere, and I'm also anxious. Working in archives aligns much more with my lifestyle and brain that I've learned. So if you don't have any experience or degree, my advice is that you need to go get experience, because if you just apply to a job, there's going to be other people that have already applied to that, and they are probably going to have more experience, and if they have more experience, the employer is more likely to hire them over you. Unfortunately, that is just kind of the game that we have to play. And as much as I wish there was more funding and just care about archives and museums and history and libraries, we are only dealt the cards that we have. So my tip would be try and get experience by volunteering. That is the easiest way to get into an archives and gain experience. And of course, you're not getting paid, but you are gaining valuable skills, and you might connect with an archivist or person there that can teach you a lot. So for me, I have a master's degree in applied history, which basically allowed me to learn different skill sets that I could apply to a history degree, whether it's working at a historic site, working at archives, working in a museum. But I wanted to work in an archives, and I gained hands-on experience while I was in school getting my degree, working at the university archives. Thankfully, I had an assistantship, which was basically a scholarship where I had a job through the university and they paid me, like I got an hourly rate, and they also paid for my tuition for graduate school, which was amazing, and the only way I would have actually gotten my degree, because I had so many student loans at that point, I was trying to find the cheapest option possible to get my degree. And I'm very lucky. I know this is an exception to the rule, and there are many people out there who have probably tried this route and have not had success or luck that I have. So I acknowledge that I'm very lucky in this, world that I've found myself in, and I'm grateful for that. Given my experience working in an archives with my degree, that allowed me to land my first job right out of graduation. Okay, next question. What's the most interesting thing you've encountered in the archives? This is funny, and I feel like a terrible historian, because technically I am a historian. Like, I have a bachelor's degree in history and a master's degree in applied history, and I think like a historian. But when it comes to like my job, I am more there for the organization and the preservation and the handling of and the access of the material, and less of the history and the like information and education side that these things have. So like not a lot of stuff sticks out in my head as something. And I also work at a religious archives, which maybe has something at play with this too, because I have a lot of interest in other like aspects of history that's not religious history. But I would say like my most interesting, or my favorite like thing I've encountered there is a minister's register book, which essentially is a private diary that this person kept, and he was a pastor, and he would log the baptisms and marriages that he performed. And this is in like the 1700s, late 1700s Pennsylvania. This pastor's name was Reverend Daniel Schumacher, and he was a traveling minister, so he would get on his horse and travel to different places to baptize and perform, marriage services for people. I love his little register book because it's not just a listing of services he's performed, but there's also fracture art in it. And fracture is essentially like folk art Pennsylvania German, early American folk art that I've come to really love. So his little manuscript book is a log of people's baptisms, but it also has his own fractal artwork in it, which I just think is one of the most interesting things. Like, I've seen some other like church books that have fractal drawings in them, but this was this guy's private journal register that he kept and had his art and his services in. So yes. So friends, as you can tell, it's gotten really dark. Like, it's 4:45, the sun's going down, and I only answered 3 questions. So I think what I'm gonna do is film the rest of it tomorrow. And yeah, because it's dark and I'm actually tired and my brain is not like computing. Like, answering those questions was kind of hard, and I feel like I forgot some certain things I should have said, and that's just part of this journey of telling myself you don't have to be everything all at once and answer every single detail. Okay, I will see you guys tomorrow. Hello friends, we're back. It's the next day. I feel refreshed. So let's continue with our Q&A, shall we? All right, we're moving into the YouTube category, and I have 2 questions that kind of relate to each other, so I'll read them both, and then one question has like a two-part question in it. So first question, how do you balance / schedule the many hats you wear as archivist, YouTuber, photo, etc.? And the other question was, I'd love to hear about how you manage YouTube and working full-time and or tips for YouTubers. So I will say balance is a word that I'm learning to kind of let go of and redefine like what balance looks like in my life. Being a person who has many interests, many careers, jobs, side things, ways I make income, ways I spend my time, hobbies. It's a lot to manage, but I wouldn't have it any other way because I just like so many things and want to do so many things. Before I realized that I was neurodivergent, which I will talk about in a later question, I did what all the productivity like gurus said to do, like time batching, getting up early, yada yada yada. You can list all the things, and I've even taught them and shared them and still kind of do like on my YouTube channel, but previously like in my blog and on Instagram. So then 2020 came and I was burned out. Then 2021, 2022, I discovered that I'm neurodivergent. My viewpoint on productivity and balancing and trying to manage all the different things has shifted. I think if anything, I'm more compassionate of myself and my energy, that I simply cannot do it all at the same time. I think for me, realizing that some things in my life have to be sacrificed if I'm going to focus on a certain thing. So for example, like having my job and YouTube, there are weeks where most of my focus and my energy and my brain space is dedicated to YouTube, and then there'll be other seasons where I'm completely just focused on work. And I think that's also like another neurodivergent thing, is that we just have to focus on one thing at a time, and that's what I've found to be kind of helpful for me to get things done. So in those quieter seasons at work, maybe I don't have a lot of like urgent things going on. I have a lot of like projects that I'm like, don't have like an urgent deadline or a deadline at all, but I'm just kind of working on that. In those like quiet spaces, I'll put more time and energy into YouTube because I can. And I've also opened up to my boss about my burnout and how I just need like pockets of rest in between things. And I was seen and heard from my boss, which was really, really affirming and reassuring for me. So with her approval, we've been able to kind of create a working schedule dynamic for me that's very free-flowing and goes with my energy and allows me to honor my health and mental health and brain space. I don't know if I'm really explaining this at all. I don't want to say there's a magic answer, because there certainly isn't, and I've had moments where I'm putting too much time into YouTube and I'm like slacking at work, and like vice versa as well. So like, but I think that's been something I've tried to embrace in my like dynamic career. And doing my public talk at a university last month really kind of opened up my mind, allowed me to kind of articulate this better, that all my like things I do are all part of me, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to kind of work on them in different pockets of time and space that like align with me and my energy. And having like accommodations at my job is just something I never like if anything, I've manifested this, and I hope it's kind of inspiration for you guys to see that there are options out there to try and make everything work. I think also not working like a full 40 hours a week has a lot to do with this. To give you guys context, like I said earlier, I work from like 30 to 40 hours a week, and each week varies. Like there is no consistency in terms of like my hours. Like every week I'm at least working a minimum of 30 hours like at my main job, and then it could fluctuate depending on if I have Friday off and whatnot. I will also use like PTO and like my sick time to like rest and recover and or work on YouTube things. So I think bottom line, my biggest tip is kind of like knowing like how your energy works, knowing what you want to focus on, like is it YouTube, is it Instagram, is it TikTok, whatever, and just kind of like committing yourself to doing those things. Like for me, like YouTube is my main side thing that I am focused on, and that's like number 2. Like obviously work has to be number 1 because that's paying the bills and they need me, and 2 is YouTube. So like I think just having 2 main things, and then I have a bunch of kind of side little things underneath that, which would be hobbies like gaming, drawing and art, photography, things that I can like find time for, but I'm not doing all of them all the time. So I think my game is really trying to plan ahead and schedule my time, and also honoring my energy and having the right kind of accommodations for that. And I guess setting boundaries and being clear about like what I need and want. And I understand not everybody can have this. I mean, before I landed in this position, I worked full-time at my previous job, and I was doing blogging and business stuff on the side, and I did the like, you know, I would wake up early and do stuff for a couple hours, then go to work for like 8 hours, come home and continue working, and that was not sustainable at all, and that ultimately led up to my burnout in 2020. So I've had to scale down from that. Now I take productivity tips with a grain of salt, and I'm more interested in learning how to be productive and consistent, or just showing up in general from people that have a neurodiverse lens, that are more geared towards people whose brains are different. And I think my biggest tip for YouTubers is just to remember like what your purpose is, and if you don't know what your purpose is or like what your main drive is, figure that out first, because that is what I constantly lean back on, and that's how I keep going even in the midst of slow growth, when I'm not motivated, or my videos aren't getting as many views as I thought they would, or I put so much time into a certain video and it just didn't get the amount of engagement or views that I like had hoped for. When I have those moments of like, what is the point of doing this? I remind myself that 1, I'm making videos to document and share my life because I have a lot of value to add to the world, and having a community that tells me that they are grateful for that just makes that even more motivating for me to continue showing up. So I think first and foremost, I do this for myself. I'm not doing this to make money. Like, of course I'd love to make money and like make more money, but that's not the number 1 reason why I'm doing this. And I've learned from past goals and experiences that can't be the number 1 reason, because you will burn yourself out and lose momentum and lose passion. And my second motivating factor is you guys, my community. Knowing that I've cultivated the community that I've had over these past 4 years is the second main driver of why I'm showing up. Again, when I'm like going through a rough patch and I'm trying to like figure out how to like get back into the swing of things, I remind myself that there are people on the other end that watch my videos, they like them, they comment, or they're just silent viewers, and or they follow me on Instagram. Knowing that there's people on the other side, that's really important, and that's amazing. And those 2 things are what drive me to keep coming back. And my final tip will be, make sure you take rest, and don't force yourself to do things, because you will burn yourself out, friends. I've been there. Okay, The sub question from one of these, I'm originally from Central PA as well, so I'd love to hear some of your favorite historical spots or places to visit. So I love that. I am very proud of being from Central Pennsylvania. I never was until very recently. I think now, like post-election, like people might think, oh, Central Pennsylvania is very frightening and very much a red state. That is true. I am from Lycoming County, and that was, I think 70% of that county voted red in this past election. And I will say, like, that is something I've had to reconcile with and work through internally, and I'm at a place where, like, I'm not ashamed of being from Lycoming County. I'm not ashamed of being from Central Pennsylvania or Pennsylvania in general. It's an amazing state. There are amazing people here, and I gotta say the nature is my favorite part of where I'm from. There's so many mountains and great hiking spots and just small little pockets of towns and bars and coffee shops and breweries, and it really is such a slower pace of life. That's why I really love going home and visiting my family when I can, and when I do, I make sure to just kind of savor it and go to my favorite places, coffee shops, bookstores, outdoor places. So in terms of like places I recommend to visit, I think I'm just gonna like recommend like towns or like counties to check out based on where I've lived and where I've spent time. Now there's so many different places in Pennsylvania that I haven't been or spent much time in. Let's see, where do I even begin? So I mentioned before that my favorite like place, city, area to go to is Lancaster City or Lancaster County as a whole. It's where there's a large Amish and Mennonite population, and it just has that historical old America charm that I really have grown to love growing up in this state. And there's so many like hip and cool places to go, like coffee shops and art places and boutiques and bookstores, and I'd love to live in Lancaster one day, just to say I did. Lebanon County is near Lancaster County, and that is also another very beautiful like place that I've visited in terms of like the scenery and the mountains and just that like small town vibes. State College, which is more north central and more up towards where I'm from in Lycoming County, is always a fun place to go. It's home of Penn State football, which I am not a Penn State football fan at all. But I used to go to State College a lot when I was in high school and hang out with friends, because it was just like the cool place to go to like get out of, you know, our hometown and go hang out at a college town. Berks County is another place that I have spent a lot of time in when I was in school at Kutztown. I went to Kutztown University and I love Kutztown. Like, that's where I met George, that's where we fell in love, that's where I made a lot of friends that I, you know, still am in touch with, and where my best friend Alicia and I like lived together and were roomies and went to school together. We had a radio show there, and it's just a very cute town as well. There's a bookstore and a record shop. It's a great community atmosphere, and there's even like a crystal cave like tourist attraction there that I never went to ever, and now I'm like, why did I never go to that? Probably because I was a broke college student and didn't want to pay the fee to get in. But there's also just a lot of like Pennsylvania German history in Kutztown, and also Lancaster and Lebanon, and like that kind of like lower central part of the state. But I would say Central PA is great for hiking if you love hiking and you're like near or a couple hours away. Look at a map, check out the counties I recommended, and just do some rabbit holing, because there's a lot of great stuff there. And I will also say Harrisburg. I have certainly spent plenty of time in Harrisburg, which is the capital, and there's like the main kind of downtown area where there's a lot going on like with the government side of things, but also just like a lot of cool shops and art spots and bookshops that I still need to go to. And my friend Alicia lives there now, so I'm grateful that I have like her that I could visit there, and then we could go do stuff together. I just noticed my like video, I don't know what happened, it just turned off a while ago. Okay, anyway, I digress. Okay, we're moving into personal questions, which are certainly fun. So I'd love to know more about your personal style evolution. I think I remember you mentioned having a fashion blog. I love your style. Thank you so much, friend, for this question and the compliment, because I Yes, I started my whole like online sharing journey, sharing my outfits. I can't do math right now, but it's been like decades at this point, it feels like. But I would say like 2013, 2014 was really probably the beginning of my like official fashion blog, where it eventually kind of turned into like influencing and then photography and like coaching and where I am today. And that was just me because I love taking self-portraits. I've been doing photography since I was like 13 or 14 and just always enjoyed self-portraits and documenting my outfits and sharing them online and getting creative with putting outfits together. If you guys would ever be interested in me doing like a whole video just talking about my style evolution and like looking at old pictures and going through that whole thing with my archivist lens, let me know, because I'd love to film that and it would be so fun to do that. If we go through the periods of my life, like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, when we start to kind of, you know, figure out our style as kids, like under 12, I was a tomboy, like complete tomboy. My best friend Sarah and I were totally like into like Adidas and Nike and like looking like boys and doing boy things, and that was an era. Once I got into middle school, like 6th and 7th grade, I definitely dressed more preppy, like Aeropostale and American Eagle and Hollister, even though I couldn't afford any of it, because I wanted to fit in and be cool with the cool clique. That was an era. It was 8th grade that I think was the turning point to kind of the gateway into where how my style has evolved and kind of like the core blueprint of being like an emo kid and like a little bit edgy and a little bit punk and a little bit indie. So I mean 8th grade is when I started to dress like gothic, but like not the extreme Hot Topic gothic at all. Like I painted my nails black and my dad yelled at me at the dinner table. I would wear a lot of black and like hot pink was like my style. So I was just listening to a lot of like emo music and like punk and like heavier music, and I mean at that point that's kind of like how my style just like stayed, but it like still evolved. 10th, 11th, 12th grade, I guess I dressed more like indie and like quirky, like Jess from New Girl quirky, Zooey Deschanel quirky, just tried to be that cool indie girl that listened to like bands that you never heard of. I'm not like other girls. And I think those are like my favorite style moments in my life. And it was also when my friends and I we took a lot of pictures together and did a lot of photo adventures, and that's when I really started to document like my outfits and my like how I dressed. But it's just so funny, like I used to wear really, really short mini skirts like to high school, like as a 14-year-old, and it's because that was like what was cool like in the early 2000s. And now like as a 34-year-old woman, like I see like teenagers in these short things, midriffs out, and it's just like shocking. But like I know I did that like when I was a kid, a child, a teenage girl. Once I got into college, again, my style just stayed the same, but it just like evolved into whatever was like hip and trendy, like within the like indie emo space. And that, yeah, I just kind of evolved into like what I wear now, which is, I think what I wear now is like a nod to all my past selves. Do you have any pets? Great question. I do not have any pets, although George and I would love to have a pet one day. My parents used to have a dachshund named Coco, and he passed away a few years ago. May he rest in peace. But right now, George would love a cat. I don't mind cats. I'd love to have a cat, but I'm definitely a dog person, although they require more hands-on maintenance and attention. But right now we just can't have a pet just because the pet fees in our apartment is like insane, and we're just not financially like willing to like have a pet right now, but would love to one day. Have you considered writing a book of any sort? Yes. And actually I have written a book. It was never like traditionally published or anything, but I wrote like an ebook on how to like grow your blog and turn it into a business. Blogging with Purpose. If anybody remembers that, leave a comment. But that is definitely like deep in my like internet like entrepreneur archives, and I always like remember that I like wrote this thing and like sold it and people bought it. That's like a big accomplishment. I don't actively sell it anymore, nor would I ever probably sell it, but I feel like I'd love to write a memoir one day, or like some kind of self-help like related workbook, or just musings books just taking everything that I've learned about life and slow living and internet things and just putting it into some kind of narrative that would resonate with people one day. But I mean, there's still more of life to live, so I have more experiences to have for this book. How do you deal with imposter syndrome? Great question. I will always deal with imposter syndrome. I think as women, we will always have to be battling this, living in a patriarchal society, and it comes in waves. Like I've talked about in previous videos, like my confidence journey, and especially like this year, the first half of this year, I was very, very low confidence and did not believe in myself and was kind of just in a shell. And summertime, when I did that art show, is really when I came out of my shell and like remembered that like, hey, I like am creative and I like make cool things, and it resonates with some people, and it just really built my confidence up. So now like I'm in a good spot where I'm not dealing with imposter syndrome like on a regular basis, but I definitely have historically, like in my career as an artist, as just a mixed person living in a white supremacist world. Like I'm always constantly second guessing myself, thinking I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't have an experience like in my field. I didn't get the traditional like degree in library science to be an archivist, like photography. Like I'm always comparing like my photos to like other photographers. I don't think it's good enough. And these are all things I've wrestled with and still wrestle with on a, you know, but right now I'm not like, it's not like overpowering and taking over my life. So I think having somebody to talk to, whether it's a community, friend, spouse, friend, did I say friend already? Parent, just having somebody you trust that you can talk to about these things, like in the moment when it's happening, but also somebody that you can just open up to when like you're comfortable talking about that. Going to therapy also really, really helped me work through a lot of these confidence and imposter syndrome, and also taught me like tools to like regulate when I'm going through those things. I think accepting that it's normal and that a lot of people, all women, deal with imposter syndrome, even if you don't think they do, like they do, just because of the society we live in. I think having compassion and understanding is the first step to kind of breaking through that barrier, and then like showing up and fighting it through coping skills, talking to people. And I think also being vulnerable and like sharing that, like as somebody that has a platform and has a YouTube and makes videos, like I'm very open to sharing those struggles, and that helps me also articulate it and understand it internally. So thank you guys for being here and listening to me. Neurodiversity. Can you talk more about finding out that you're neurodivergent, how you found out, which condition do you think you have, how to deal with it, etc. So I am still I'm not diagnosed with anything. Honestly, if it was not for my friend Amanda, who also has a YouTube channel, Cozy Creek Things, I will link her down below. Go check her out and subscribe to her channel. She's amazing. She is the one that brought it up to me. We've been friends for years, like in the creative space, and then once we realized we lived near each other, we started to hang out more, and she used to work at my archives job for a little bit, doing like freelance website stuff and library cataloging. So we were able to spend a lot of time like in person together, and especially like at work. And that's when one day, like she just said, I think you're neurodivergent, Sheila. And like once she said that, it just kind of opened the floodgates of like learning that I am, or at least I affirm that I am, without any official diagnosis. And it's just little things that she would notice, because she was also looking at TikToks and, you know, online and learning from other people. And at that point, I just knew I wasn't normal, but I didn't know like what was wrong with me in terms of like why I wasn't consistent with certain things, why I was getting had so many like burnout periods at work, why being in a room with people is so draining, like beyond the introverted stuff. Thank you, Amanda. I still don't really officially know like what I could be. I think I'm somewhere either on the autism spectrum or have some form of ADHD. That's kind of like where I'm at, and it's scary to like say that out loud because I'm not formally diagnosed, but I think self-diagnosis is empowering and important, especially in a society where healthcare is not that accessible or affordable. And that's kind of like where I'm at right now. I'm still like learning about it. I listened to the audiobook Unmasking Autism by Devon and highly recommend that if you are somebody that's also kind of in this like discovery, discernment, am I or am I not kind of period, and just reading books from, you know, trusted sources that have studied it and doctors and things like that, but also gaining anecdotal information from YouTube and TikTok and like other people that share their experiences online, because there's just so much that's not studied and available out there, especially for women and especially for like people of color, women of color, or Asian Americans specifically, like for my demographic. So I think that's also why self-diagnosis and learning is very empowering as well. I'd love to make more videos about being neurodivergent, like as I get comfortable talking about it, and I always would, like I'm always mentioning it like randomly here and there, but like coming out and like making like a big video about it and like tagging it or like titling it like neurodivergent is like frightening to me, but baby steps, friends. But I think it'd be fun to do another vlog where I talk more through like not symptoms but like characteristics that I resonate with, or like things I struggle with like at work and like outside of work. And I think for me, when it comes to like the autism spectrum, like I am a high masking individual, and I have learned to exist in a society because of survival. And I think being an Asian American woman with an immigrant parent also instilled that need in me to blend in and learn how to like deal with people, because I have to survive. I have to like exist in this world. So for me, like I can socialize and like do that even though I'm like anxious or I don't want to, because I know I have to, but then I will be severely burned out like from dealing with phone calls and people and presentations and just dealing with socializing. It completely drains me, which is why I'm so grateful I found myself in a career that is great for introverted people with neurodivergent brains. And yes, I will end it there because brain is braining right now, or not braining. Last category, guys, the fun one: books, movies, music, whatever. Okay, what is your all-time favorite film, book, and musician? What movie makes you genuinely belly laugh? Okay, I had a really hard time when I was looking over these questions. I was like, I don't know how to answer this because I don't have just one favorite movie or TV show or musician or what, you know, I'm a multi-passionate person. I like lots of things. So I wasn't really sure how to answer this. I'm also not a huge film person, and I think it's an attention span thing. I definitely prefer shows over movies, but I think like a range of favorite movies for me range from like childhood movies that I will always put on like as comfort movies, and that for me is Pocahontas, Disney, my favorite Disney movie of all time. And I think I love Pocahontas, which is such a funny thing because growing up in the early 90s as in a very predominantly white environment and being a mixed child, nobody looked like me, and nothing in media really looked like me either. And at that time when Pocahontas came out, like that was the only kind of representation of somebody who wasn't like blonde, brunette, white girl. And I think that's part of why I really latched on to that movie and why it became so important to me. Other favorite movies are like Christmas movies, like Home Alone 2 and The Santa Claus are my all-time favorite Christmas movies, and I guess my favorite movies of all time as well. And I can always just laugh and feel good and have them like on the background, and we'll watch them every single year. More recent films that I've watched, George and I really like A24 films, and there are plenty that I've yet to see, but we really liked The Lighthouse, which I think came out a few years ago, but it's completely in black and white. It's like a suspense psychological thriller of some sort, but that movie was really, really good. I recommend it if you have not seen it. It's about like two guys that like are lighthouse keepers, and they go insane because they are stranded on an island with a lighthouse. And it's also like a historical movie because you guys know I love my period dramas. And everything Everywhere All at Once, another film that I think won like best film of 2022. Amazing movie. It made me cry. Honestly, George and I should watch it again because it's that good, and if you have not seen it, go check it out. Favorite book? Oh god. I will say the Discovery of Witches like whole thing, the All Souls series by Deborah Harkness is one of my favorite fantasy series. Just, again, I can't pick just one book, but I think that as a whole, as a series, it'd be my favorite like book that I would probably pick. If there was only like one book I could read for the rest of my life, it'd probably be A Discovery of Witches. Favorite musician? So it's hard to pick just one, but I always say my favorite band of all time is Death Cab for Cutie. I've loved them since I was 14 or 15, and they will always be my favorite band. And honestly, I feel like if I could only listen to one artist for the rest of my life, it would be Death Cab, because one, they have a whole slew, they have a huge discography, thank you. Because they've been making music since like, I don't even know, the mid 90s. So there'd be a lot of music to listen to. And I'm an album girl, so I love listening to music, like full albums, front to back, in order. And I just have so many feels with Death Cab. Like, they mean so much to me and have helped me heal. And I love sad music. Shout out to Death Cab for Cutie. But I love so much other music that I will not get into right now. Okay, last question, which is from my dear friend Amanda. If you only read one more book this year, which book would you choose and why? Which I thought this was such an interesting question. So I'm going at this logically in terms of like, okay, for the rest of the year, I only have like about a month and a couple weeks left. So I would pick a long book, I guess. You would think I'd probably pick a holiday book, which honestly should probably be the right answer, but I don't have a holiday book in mind right now because I've yet to compile like a Christmas holiday TBR reading list, but we're gonna have that soon, guys. I'm gonna have like a holiday reading book recommendation video, but I have to get the book. So I would actually pick Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, which is book 2 of the Stormlight Archive. And look at this, it's a chonker. It's over 1,000 pages, and I read the first book, I think 2 years ago. It took me a long time, but if I'm gonna pick a book to read for the rest of the year, it's gonna be a long book, and it's gonna be a 1,000 page book. And I'm actually more eager to read this now because I was reading, like, I go on Goodreads and I see random people I follow like commenting on stuff, and somebody commented that they were reading this, and then I was reading the reviews and just reminded myself that I do want to read this. And I think I'm going to prioritize reading it like in January or like start it next year. But I did read book 1 and it took a while to get through, but I really enjoyed the world building and the story and the characters. And I mean, people like rave on this whole series, on Sanderson, and I just have to like find out what I think of it. So this might surprise Amanda or some of you, but this would be my book that I would read for the rest of the year if it was the only one. Okay, friends, we made it through all the questions, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I've had fun filming and chatting, and hopefully you guys got to know me a little bit better. And I'd love to know, I actually wanted to ask this question at the beginning of the video and completely forgot, but let me know how you found me or how long you've been watching my videos if you know. I always think that's so fun to like hear like how long somebody's been following me or watching me, or if there was like a moment where they like, you clearly remember like how you like discovered me, whether it was an archivist video or a reading vlog video or whatever. And it also like makes me feel good inside and keeps me motivated to show up and keep making content for you guys. So I'd love to hear from you, like how long you've been following me, or what your favorite kind of content from me is. Are you here for the archives video? Are you here for the reading? Are you here for everything? I just love to hear from you. And thank you again for being here and for being part of this community and keeping me going and showing up. And I could not do this without you guys. So I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.